welcome back to another Mindful Day. Today I'm here with Matt. Fortunately, Grace wasn't able to join us today due to some travel after the holidays. But Matt and I are here and we just want to talk about a little bit on being mindful with yourself and to not be so hard on yourself, especially that we just passed a holiday and I know sometimes things can slow down a little bit and it's still being gentle with yourself and not overdoing it. So thanks for being here with us today, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I know that at the end of May we have Nourished Inside Out Live Virtual Summit that Grace and I are hosting, and you're one of our speakers. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about the topic that you want to bring to the audience and why it's important on mindfulness and what you teach on.
Sure. So, I mean, it's obviously a very broad topic, but I think that for the purposes of maybe today's discussion being on the tail end of a holiday, oftentimes the we get triggered very easily by our families, whether we can love them with all our heart, but one word from a family member can make us feel like we're 13. And I think it's largely because our own narrative about who we are was written by our family to some extent, and then we spend the rest of our lives editing that narrative. So it's if we find ourselves in that situation, I would just say it's kind of like the weather, right? It's raining. I don't yell about why it's raining. I don't try to figure out how to stop it from raining. And I and what I'm this metaphor about the weather, I think is applicable not just for the topic that we're discussing about being triggered by family or spending time with family, but just in general. Like, I think so much of the productivity guru stuff out there, it kind of focuses on how to stop it from raining. And, my perspective is coming at it from 180 degrees out, where like it's going to rain. That's just part of life. Right. And so, how do we, how do we get through the rain while being gentle on ourselves and recognize that we didn't cause the rain? We're all human, so we all go through thunderstorms in our own minds, and it's okay. It's not a red flag that there's something wrong with us. It just means that we're human. And I think that we it I'm reluctant to say society, but society generally teaches us that pain is some sort of bad thing, that we need to avoid it, and if we get it, get rid of it. It's like this hot potato. But it's on the bus all the time, right? So it's always with us. It's always part of our lives. And like I said, I think we have to, instead of trying to figure out how to avoid it, how do we make friends with it and acknowledge it's part of our existence?
Yeah, I really like how you talked about the weather because I think sometimes like the weather and nature is such a big teacher for us that we don't even realize. I heard this quote a few weeks ago, and it said, "When you ask for flowers, don't when you get rain, because that's what you asked for. In order to get the flower, you need the rain. In order to get the rainbow, you have to go through the rain." And I think there's so many valuable lessons there. There's things that we can't control. Like you can't control the weather from being the weather, but you can learn from it. And I think those are such beautiful things. Especially like what you were saying about spending more family time around the holidays. Like well, you celebrated Easter, spent more time with your family. It's easy to get tired. I say that myself, you know. And I think it's so important to, like I always say, it's not you're not responsible for your trauma, but it's your responsibility to heal it. And I was just reflecting on this the other day because I've been at my parents' house the past couple of days, and some things that they may say or in the tone that they say trigger me. But then I had to reassure myself and say, it's not their responsibility to heal it. It's my responsibility to heal and grow from it. And I think that's a really big topic that's honestly a really big topic that we're going to talk about at the Inside Out Live Virtual Summit is understanding your triggers and finding better ways to what's the I don't want to say react, respond. Better ways to respond to them because everything we only have two choices in this life, and it's to control your actions and your attitudes. And if you don't know how to control either one, then it's just going to be an emotional disaster. So that's also like what we're really going to be focusing on is learning how to nurture yourself and to have fulfillment within yourself so you can respond better to people, places, and things that once you see trigger you.
That's well said. It's funny when we talk about family. I think that when we leave the nest, we take on the responsibility of our lives, and part of that responsibility is growth. But in my experience, coming back home is where that growth is tested. Like it's kind of easy to be whoever you want to be out in the world because no one really knows you the way your family knows you. And so when we come back home, how do we respond? Do we fall into similar patterns? Do we have the same triggers, or did we truly grow? And it's okay if we fall into those triggers, but I think it's an indication to us that we still have some more work to do.
Yep.
Yeah, and then
Completely.
the other thing I was going to mention was about gentleness. Um, I think gentleness gets a really bad rap because I think some people think of it as like giving up or being passive. And I don't remember where I heard this, or maybe I made it up. I don't know, but it's like gentleness isn't a weakness; it's strength that doesn't feel the need to shout. It takes a lot of um, it takes a lot of strength to be gentle with yourself, and quite frankly, gentle with others. And it took me a long time to realize that that's not being passive. That's not giving up. That's being very, very strong because like you said, the responses that we often grow up with. I mean, I'm not proud of it, but at 17 years old, I put my hand through a piece of drywall in my home. Right, that was not an okay response, um, and but it's the easy response, right? So, like blowing up and getting out of control, it's not only kind of somewhat unacceptable and maybe reflective that we have some work to do on ourselves. It's actually the easy thing to do. The hard thing to do is to demonstrate restraint and gentleness, not only with ourselves but giving the people around us grace. Uh, and, and to me, that's been the journey.
Completely. And it's like exactly like what you said, easy response, but that's not always. What are some things that have helped you when it comes to seeing your family again or having that family during the holidays? And if something does trigger you, what helps you recenter yourself?
Yeah. So one phrase that I have found myself using around my family over the years, and it's pretty simple. It's like, hey, that used to be me, but it's not anymore. Like we can laugh about it, and if you want to tease me about it, that's fine. But that's not me anymore. And as long as you are aware of that, that's fine. Because we all do it, right? We freeze them in a moment in time. So even our parents, right? Like, I don't think we recognize that our parents are not the same people that raised us. They're different people now, right? And our parents do the same thing to us. Like, if we walk in the house, they probably still see the 5-year-old toddler Matt coming into the room, and that's understandable, but it can trigger us. And so just a gentle reminder, like, hey, I understand why you said that, but it used to be true about me, but it's not true anymore. That's sort of one mechanism I've used in the past. The other one is just silence, right? So if someone says something that triggers me, a 5-second pause can be the most powerful thing that you can do because it gives everyone an opportunity to reflect on what was just said, and you're just kind of gathering yourself. Like there's no reason to get into this back and forth. Anything that can slow us down is likely to give our mind time to settle itself. And yet if you watch people who are emotionally fired up, it's like boom, 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 boom. It goes back and forth like this, right? So I would say in the last 15 years, I've tried really hard to, anytime I'm in any kind of emotionally triggering circumstance, before I say anything, I take a breath. And it seems like an eternity, but it's not. Like the listener doesn't even know. But if you could just take a breath, stay quiet for a second, it's very powerful, especially to the people who are around you and also to yourself. Um, and then I would say the last thing, and it's a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's true, is that change doesn't have to be loud to be real. And so, just because other people aren't seeing the things, the changes that we've made in ourselves, like it's not really. You said something about the trauma that we may have experienced isn't our fault, but it is our responsibility to attend to it. Um, and the same thing is kind of in a related sense, like what other people think of us, even if it's our family members, is kind of none of our business. That's on them. And if I stop being the general manager of the world and the general manager of my family, I recognize, like, just let them. Like, you're probably not going to change their mind, but it doesn't have to get that much under your skin either.
Those are some really valuable points that you said. I'm really thankful that thank you for sharing those. Something that I learned that this is a little bit off topic, but I was talking with a man who specializes in communication, and he said he almost never has a problem when he's talking to somebody. Like if they interrupt him, he lets them. But when he's waiting for his turn to talk, when the person finishes talking, he always counts down to five. On his fingers, he'll like go down five fingers, and then if the person is really done talking, then forward. And I think that's a really great tip and technique, especially when you're around people that are used to the old version of you. If they say something to trigger you, just count down on your fingers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Because 9 times out of 10, that person is looking for a reactive response or an emotion response. And a lot of times we don't want to revert back to that. Like we've been working on creating and cultivating a calm nervous system. Why would we want to be reactive and to give them that joy in the moment? And I really like the tip of the 5 second rule. Quite honestly, like it goes back to just let them, you know. I think a lot of times what I've learned on my healing journey myself is that it's not that people don't want to see you grow, they don't want to change the version of you that they have in their minds. Like you were saying, like people will probably still, like your mother was like the 5-year-old version of you. That's what she's probably reminiscing on, but she doesn't want to see you grown up all the time. Like she understands that's a part of life, but she's still maybe reminiscing on like the memories from childhood. And a lot of times people like change, but they don't like forced change. People love getting their hair done, they love getting their nails done. Those are, but they like it at their own convenience.
Mm-hmm.
And you're growing and you're healing your inner child, and you're forcing that person who's holding on to the old version of you to change by seeing you through a different lens. And I think once I learned that, it really gave me a lot more grace for around me, like my family or friends as well.
So I'm counting to 5 now. I'm doing the thing. Um, so yeah, and if we're honest with ourselves, like just do this little exercise, this little thought experiment. Think of someone you went to high school with that you're good friends with, but not everyday type friends. But you consider, if you went home, you'd probably see them or check in on them. And then imagine today you heard they won $10 million in the lottery. Be honest with yourself. Like, is your first instinct to say, "Oh, I'm so happy for that person," or is it clouded with a little bit of like, "Oh man, like it's almost instinctual." And I hate to use this this analogy, but I think it's fair of the crabs in a bucket, right? So like the people we grow up with, we're crabs in a bucket, and you watch like one crab try to escape, and what do the other crabs do? They pull him back in. And I don't think we can rely on, if you can, it's wonderful. But I don't think we can rely on the people who are closest to us and of our old self to support our growth. I just don't think we can. Now, there's exceptions to every rule. You have a brother who's, your trusted ally, your parents. I'm not trying to tell you not to. I'm just, my experience is that um, you don't get as much support from the people who you'd expect to get support, because sometimes your own growth actually threatens their sense of self-worth, because everyone knows the work they have to do on themselves, even if they're procrastinating it. And so when I see someone else doing the work, it actually just makes me feel a little bit less good about myself. And if I'm self-reflective and mature enough to acknowledge that, I can have the thought, but then still be very supportive to whoever this person is. I don't think everyone that I have met in my lifetime is as self-aware enough or self-reflecting. They'll resort to things like, who does he think? Who does she think she is? Or she's off doing some crazy new age thing, or "Nah, I don't even recognize her anymore." um, that's all very predictable, right? That's like the rain. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, and I do want to add to that. It's like for anybody who is on their healing journey, who has just started or who has been on it for a while, I just want to encourage you to keep going, because that's the beautiful thing. For the longest time, I felt like, going off my experience, I felt like I was in an isolation phase where people didn't get me. Like whenever I worked at a salon, I used to be a stylist at the salon a lot. I always felt like I was making myself smaller because I didn't want to talk about the healing journey that I was on and the things I was doing to better myself, because they wouldn't understand. So I just wanted you guys to know that like you guys have a community here with Nat and Grace and I and the Nourished Inside Out community, because we understand. We're You're not on this healing journey alone. It may feel like you guys are alone, but not. You just have to go through that isolation period sometimes, but eventually you'll find your people. And that's exactly what we've been creating here: a safe space, a safe community. I remember when I was going through the darkest of dark times, and I was deciding if I should leave my ex husband or not and just figure out, do I do it or do I not? I don't know what the road ahead looks like, but I do know that if I stay, it still looks pretty dark. So when I was in that time, I was constantly looking for a community. I was constantly looking for people that I can relate with, but I had a hard time finding it. So that's also why we're creating Nourished Inside Out, and that's why we're doing this virtual summit. So you guys can meet new people and find people who you can relate with and grow and heal together. So we're super excited to have you guys, and we really encourage you guys there because we want to be there with you. And if you have anything to add about it, Matt, I'd love to feel free.
No, I agree. In fact, I've been on Substack. I guess it's coming up on 2 months now, and it has been a very supportive community, and I'm very grateful for people such as yourself, Annetta, and Grace, and I could list 30 other names just in a very short period of time. That it's it's easy to fall into hyperbole here, but I mean it. Like, in a very short period of time, I made a lot of progress in my own journey because I felt more comfortable. Like, I felt like, okay, this is like my tribe. Like, they kind of get me. I kind of get them. I can put out some things that make me feel a little bit vulnerable, and it's not a matter of it being just okay. What I'm finding is it's helping people, meaning like people are saying like, "Hey, I feel that way too, Matt. Thanks for saying it out loud," or "Thanks for writing about it." So I couldn't agree with you more about community. I just, going back to my previous point, I do believe that many of us think our community are the people who were closest to us in the past. We just kind of assume that. And my experience is that you can't rely on that. Like you just because it goes back to this whole like they knew you as a certain they had you in a box. And if you show up and say, "Well, I'm over here now," it threatens their own sense of identity. And that's not everyone, but I've seen it a lot. And then the other thing about um, you didn't use the word, but I think it's fair to say the word pain. We carry it with us, but I recently learned about primary and secondary pain, right? So, primary pain is where you, someone who you care very deeply for leaves you, right? That hurts. That's the primary pain. But then your mind immediately goes to, well, why do they do that? That's secondary pain, right? That's not really related to the event that hurt you. It's now you manifesting that event, and now you're going to doubt your own self worth. That's secondary pain. And then you're going to wonder the next time you meet someone whether you can really commit yourself to that person. That's secondary pain, right? It's self-induced. I mean, it's natural and it's logical and we all experience it, but it's worth being cognizant of the fact that like that's not the pain. Let's keep the pain what it was, right? Like and it goes back to the expression about I will not shit on myself, right? So every time, at least in my own journey, I'll hear myself saying, "Well, my father shouldn't have done that." It's like, yeah, but Matt, he did. Or this person shouldn't have done this, or they shouldn't have left, or my life shouldn't be like this. But it is, right? And once you kind of just take a pause and say, "But they did," like your shoulds are of no use here. Like it almost provides zero value. So for me, I try to be very aware of any time I call it shitting on myself, right? So if I'm shitting on myself, it's like, well, hold, slow down, slow down. And actually, if you're interested in reading more about that I didn't come up with this notion. It's a pretty famous psychologist named Albert Ellis, who wrote about rational emotive therapy, and it's very much focused on that whole idea of like, okay, well, now what? Like once you accept that, okay, the thing that shouldn't have happened did happen, you're kind of left with a decision to make of like, okay, am I going to carry it around for the rest of my life, or am I going to deal with it? Am I going to make friends with it? But many of us continue to carry that word shit around with us, which I think is actually serves as an obstacle for the real healing.
Yeah, I really like that. It's kind of like ties in with what I was saying earlier. It's like that, like you just said, like that person shouldn't have done that, or that shouldn't have happened, and that goes back to we're not responsible for our trauma, but it's our responsibility to do with it. It's our responsibility to take what the situations that have come our way and how to make it better and how to be better and grow through it. Like a lot of times we don't want to go through challenging times, but we go through them so they can shape us and to build us into who we are. And tying that back into weather, it's like I'm from the Midwest. You're in the Midwest. The seasons are quite unique, but they don't last forever. It rains, it snows, it's sunny, and then the flowers bloom. They're all temporary. So if you're going through a rainy season, it's temporary, and the sun will eventually come through. The rainbow will eventually come. It's just, are you willing to take what you have and grow through it, or are you going to go back to old habits? So it all honestly ties in perfectly.
Yeah, and I think we romanticize growth, maybe through movies, maybe through books, as something that's very sort of elegant and pristine. My experience couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, it's messy and it's ugly and it's confusing. There is no clarity when I'm growing, meaning I only get that clarity in retrospect, right? Like I think like, oh, last year when I went through all that and I came out, that opened these doors, but at no point was this like the highlight of the movie reel where everyone's going to watch Matt DiGeronimo rise above and conquer the dragon. I don't see that. I see a lot more messiness and confusion. So I'm saying that because it took me a long time to figure that out, and there may be people listening who haven't yet figured that out. That like you keep thinking like, oh, I haven't really, I didn't make any progress on this. I didn't make any progress on this because you're comparing it to some ideal um, process that actually doesn't exist for anyone.
Absolutely. It's like, for example, like when you're getting started in a career, when I was getting started as a hairstylist, I started working in a salon and there were 30 plus stylists there and there was maybe a couple assistants, and it was so easy for me to compare my journey from the very beginning to people who have been there for 10 years and plus and hairstyling. And something that I had to constantly remind myself: don't compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 10.
Great.
They were an assistant once upon a time, so now I'm going to be an assistant. Whether it's 1 year, 2 years, I'm going to enjoy it because that's where I'm going to learn. It was hard. I'm not going to lie. You assist everybody. If anything goes wrong at the salon, it's probably your fault. And everybody needs you. And you're there early, you're there late, but that's where you learn. That's where you learn discipline. That's where you learn how to be a better stylist. And when you have assistants helping you, you know how to treat them. So I had to constantly remind myself, like, they were in that position once upon a time too. They didn't just magically wake up and be a senior master stylist. So never compare your chapter 1 to chapter 10, because you don't know. Everybody talks on social media about all the good things. Everybody posts all the good hair on social. They don't post the first haircut they did. They don't post the first color. So just be gentle with yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. That's also a part of the healing, knowing that you truly are at the right place at the right time. And there's no doubt about that. You're not late. You're not early. You're exactly where you need to be in order to grow and to go far. So, coming May 24th and May 25th, we invite you to join us for Nourished Inside Out, our first live summit. We're going to be taking 2 days to talk more in depth about what Matt and I just talked about today. We have an incredible lineup of speakers, and Grace will join us as well. And we're just going to dive deep. So, this is going to be a really great weekend, and you can build community, and you never know who you're going to meet. It could be your next business partner, it could be your next best friend. So, we highly encourage you to join for Nourished and Out Live, May 20th.
Yeah, I'm excited about that, and was really grateful that you and Grace invited me to speak during that. I think um, you almost regardless. Don't get me wrong. I hope the content is wonderful, and I'm going to do my best to make sure it is. But I would almost contend that these types of events, it's more about just calling time out in your life and dedicating some time to listen to what other people have to say, because we're so used to hearing our own dialogue, and quite frankly, I know I am, so I don't feel that bad saying it. I think a lot of us become so self-absorbed that we assume like it's not rocket science, right? You're not trying to figure out how to put together a rocket. So we say to ourselves like, well, I know myself better than anyone, so yeah, I have some problems and I'll get around to fixing them at some point, or maybe not. But every time I've called a timeout and attended something like this, or spent some time with folks where I can just kind of listen to what they're going through, um, hear maybe some lessons learned or some tools that they've used. I've never regretted it. You know, like I've never come away from that thinking like, oh, it was a waste of my time. Right? It's more about just the process of giving yourself a timeout, allowing you to turn off your inner critic for a little bit, and just listen to what some other folks have to say about some things that maybe you're going through.
Absolutely. I always say, like, if you attend an event and you only get one piece of advice from there that sticks with you and it retains from you, then it was worth it for that one thing that you heard or that one piece of advice. Piece of advice could be either needed to unlock you level, or it could be the piece of advice that can help you go from being unstuck, stuck to unstuck. So I highly encourage it. And thank you guys for joining us today for Mindful Monday. Next week we'll be back at normal time at 10:30 Eastern time. So we look forward to seeing you next week again. And if you're interested in the summit, feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to get you more information about it. Have a wonderful week, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.